For tonight, back in Gittin. It's an interesting sugi again tonight. We are on Daf Memheim and Alf. Rabbi Yirmiyah Boy. Now, I got to tell you, there's something which I really I'm kind of shirked and not addressed, which is that obviously the concept of kinyan, and we're going to discuss this in much greater detail tonight. The concept of kinyan by get is not the same concept of kinyan we have by the rest of the Torah. The rest of the Torah, the concept of kinyan means to acquire something. By get, it means to receive something. Right? Even if you receive it as opposed to acquiring it, that's considered to be sufficient. And that underlies several of the issues which we're going to discuss. We discussed last time, we'll discuss again tonight about acquiring Gittin. And we're on the third line down of Memhei Amud Aleph. Rabbi Yirmiyah asks questions. If you toss the get into a courtyard which does not belong to either one of them. Now, of course, if the courtyard doesn't belong to either one of them, what's the question? The question is obviously that she has now received permission to use this courtyard which belongs to a third neutral party for the purpose of making kinyanim. So can she acquire the get in that chutzner? So Rabbi Yaakov said, there's a question by the rabbis. Rabbi Yavin said, Machlokas Rav Rabbi Chia Ruba. Throws in Rav Rabbi Chia the Great. The Rabbi Shmuel said, and Rabbi Zira and Rabbi Chia Brahachi all said b'shem Rav, Ein Mashicha Koina v'Chotzer Shein Shneim. You can't do Mashicha on a Chotzer which is not yours. You can do Mashicha on a Chotzer which is yours. You don't necessarily need Mashicha there. But you do Mashicha in a public thoroughfare which is not a Rishus HaRabim, a Simta. If you have a cow you have to pull in order to make a kinyan, you can do it in your courtyard and in a public thoroughfare, but not in a private backyard which either belongs to the seller or belongs to a third party. Now, of course, you don't do Mashiach on a get, right? That's obvious, right? Get is not susceptible to Mashiach, only large objects you pull in order to acquire them. But we're bringing a parallel. Just like you can't do Mashiach in a neutral domain, so too you cannot acquire a get in a neutral domain. Okay? That's what he wants to say. Rabbi Chia argues. Rabbi Chia says, again, he said about Mashiach, but we want to extrapolate from there to get. When are mul objects acquired by pulling for Rishus HaRabim in an area which is a public thoroughfare, not a true Rishus HaRabim, it's got to be an alleyway. You don't do Mashiach in a true Rishus HaRabim. There'll be sugis and Basra, not here, but it has to be a thoroughfare which is public but not completely public. So when do we say or a car which does not belong to either of them, there too Mashiach works. When you're in the domain of the buyer, you don't even need Mashiach. Once the seller has agreed, accepted upon himself, Zacha, the courtyard itself, makes the acquisition. So therefore we see clearly that even in a neutral area, you can make Mashiach. So to a neutral area, the woman can borrow the rights of the area to acquire her get. Okay? So it says the Gemara, once we're on the topic, we continue bringing down the halachim, though it's totally irrelevant to our discussion. If the object is in the seller's backyard, the kinyan is not going to place until such time as the object is picked up, or you do Mashiach, but you do Mashiach and pull it out of the jurisdiction of the owner. So therefore the halacha is that there is no Mashiach or any kinyan other than picking up and actually physically taking hold of the object when you're in the seller's domain. In the buyer's domain, you don't need Mashiach. The domain itself works. In a neutral area, which is owned by neither party, there it's a machlokas. If it's a privately owned area, we say that it's a machlokas Rav and Rabbi Chia, whether Mashiach works in that neutral area or not. Okay? And we want to say the same machlokas applies by get as well. Okay? So it says the Gemara, this will continue again, continuing. If it's in the hands of somebody, if it's in the third party's domain, somebody who was holding on to the object for safekeeping, Lokana You don't acquire Achi Zakeu Bahen until that third party makes the kinyan on your behalf because it's his backyard. Achi Isklos Makoma until he rents you the place. But if he does rent you the place, then that can work. Now, Ula Bar Yishmael Amar Lo Sa Al Daito Liskos Bekalos. Actually, the Gemara is going out to a new topic here. The question is, I'm not sure where exactly a new topic starts. Actually, Ula Bar Yishmael starts a new topic. Ula Bar Yishmael goes back in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that if he puts the get into her basket, so then that's a valid kinyan, even though the basket should belong to her husband, because everything a woman owns is owned by her husband. So how can you put a get into the wife's basket? That's considered to be a valid transaction. So I'll tell you why. He never had in mind these close also. He doesn't acquire his wife's basket. It's like his wife's clothing. Belongs to her. Doesn't really belong to him. Says, come on, give me a break. What if it's a golden basket? He certainly wants to own her golden baskets. Says, no, on the contrary. He certainly doesn't have in mind to acquire her gold basket. It's a fascinating Yerushalmi. The reason is that the basket is then regarded as jewelry. And just like jewelry is considered to be hers because it's clothing, a golden basket is decorative. It's basically useless. It's only a decoration. So therefore it's like jewelry, and she definitely owns that. In other words, a regular basket which is utilitarian, maybe the husband retains ownership over. But a basket which is decorative, she certainly has ownership over. Okay, so that's those things which are intimately hers belong to her. Rabbi Yochanan, she has to be using it at that time in order for it to be considered hers. Otherwise, it goes back to the inventory of the husband. Shamsi means it's like selective. In other words, the husband occasionally gives her the rights over it, implicitly, not explicitly, and occasionally takes it back. So if she's using it, so it's considered to be hers at that time. Rabbi Yisrael said, now he has to be using it, but she has to be using it at that time when the get is given. But sure, Lord has to be tied onto her. And I guess that either that means that at that time the husband actually implicitly makes it hers, only if it's tied onto her, or only that way it's considered to be like clothing, and that's why it belongs to her. It's not clear if the tied onto her is a function of usage or a function of the clothing, making more like clothing. So Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi says, now it has to be tied onto her, but it has to be that when she gets up, it rises with her. And then, of course, it's very much attached to her body and attached to a person. Tana Rabbi Yossi Messiah Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yossi learned the brisa, which is a proof to Rabbi Yochanan that you don't need it tied onto her, because it says, even to toss it into her pot, Arezim Ugreshes. Now, a pot seems not to be decorative. So it must be, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that even if it's utilitarian, at the time that she's making use of it, it's considered to be hers. And therefore, if you throw, even though theoretically the husband owns all the pots and pans, right? And it's not in the Bavli, this Gemara. But theoretically, if you throw it into a pot or pan, the Yerushalmi is saying the time that she uses it, it's considered to be hers. It's a very interesting concept. So basically, implicit in any marriage is that whatever the wife is using at the time she's using it is considered to be under her jurisdiction. Even if the ultimate ownership is his, at the time she's using it, it's hers, and therefore if you throw a get into it, it's considered as if she received the get. Okay? And I guess if somebody else wanted to be mocked or something to her, she could toss it also into her pot, and at that point it would not belong to the husband, rather belong to her. Yes?
That's nothing to do with the shiur, like tashmish, the chazak, like something that you use.
I know you mean chazaka mashtach zioranim shalo. I don't know if that would pertain here. I don't think so, because it's in the house, so therefore it doesn't indicate it's any. I don't think so.
Well, why would the husband know about pots and pans anyways?
Yeah, he knows he owns them. That's the main thing. Okay. Now, what can of course be given against the wife's will, but she must know she's receiving a get. Don't put it on the table. You might need a neck here. Put it on the tissue. mean, once you put it down, the odds are you're not going to be able to finish it. You don't want to finish it? Not right now. So, if he said to her, acquire this document, and he did, which is a document of a debt, or she found it protruding out of her clothing, like she was asleep and he stuffed it into her clothing. Korah, she reads it, lo and behold, it's a get. Ain't no get. It's not a get. She's got to be aware that what she's receiving is a get at the time she's receiving it. Similarly, even he put it in her hand, but she's sleeping. Then she wakes up, Korah, and she reads it, and she sees it a get. Ain't no get, it's not a get. Until he says, this is your get. If she was standing in a public thoroughfare, now this is what comes back to what I was saying before. She sat in a public thoroughfare and he tossed it close to her, Megureshes. Karavlov, it's close to him, ain't a Megureshes, she's not divorced. Mechtel, if it falls precisely halfway, Megureshes, fein Megureshes, Suffolk, whether she's divorced or not. So again, in Kinyanim, this wouldn't work. In the Sina, in giving, it works, right? If you toss something at somebody who lands close to them, it works. It can only be a kalacha. It seems to me in Hilchos Gittin, not a lacha in Choshen Mishpat.
It's Dalet Amos we're talking.
The Gemara at this point, the Gemara didn't say that yet. The Gemara is going to say that, but you don't know that yet. Sounds like even, and in fact, it's not even clear among the poskim. The poskim we're talking about Dalet Amos or not. Among the Mefarshim, we're talking about within Dalet Amos, not within Dalet Amos. That's going to become an issue later on.
Doesn't he have something in Hefker that it has to be, if it's within Dalet Amos, it's yours?
Tomorrow in the Dorim, Daf Lamed Dalet, yeah. Yeah, within Dalet Amos of a Hefker thing. Yeah. Actually, but the Gemara is going to discuss here too. Yeah. Okay, so I'm Rabbi Yechon said, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. I'm just like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Omer, Loila made a get, it's never about get, until he tells her time is giving it to her, Hagitech. This is your get. Kamu Karov. Now, what is considered to be close? So, Rav Amar Arba Amos. Rav says it has to be within 4 amos. Now, it's not good enough, it's just close enough to her. It has to be within 4 amos of her. Rabbi Loi HaYoresh, Rabbi Loi the heir. And everybody goes crazy. What exactly HaYoresh means? The Mashbiach wanted to say Rabbi Loi HaYerushalmi. Doesn't sound right, but that's the Shaitar Yisrael wanted to change it to Rabbi Loi named Rabbi Shimon Lakish because he was a Talmud of Rish Lakish. Anyway, he said Arba Amos. He said Arba Amos as well. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yochum, Rabbi Yad said, "Pisha Dam Raglayim." It has to be within the distance that she can grab onto it with her hands outstretched. Okay, Pisha Yodayim. With Tina, we learned also the Bryce of Pisha Yodayim. Rabbi Bar Rabbi Shem Rab said Pisha Yodayim. Mechav Shitasi the Rab. I have a kash on Rab. Talmud Amar Arba Amos. Elsewhere he said 4 amos. And here he says Pisha he says Pisha Yodayim, which is closer because you can't stick your hands 4 amos away, right? So there, says Gemara, Kan Locha. In theory, he said Arba Amos. Kan Lamaisa, when it came to practice, it was more Machmir. It says has to be within Pisha Yodayim. Okay? Now, it's still a Chiddush in Gittin, because in Choshen Mishnah, we don't have this concept of Pishut Yadayim, right? But here we see that by Gittin that works, that's considered even Nos and Biyada, an extension of her domain. Okay? Says, Tiny Rebbe Lezer said, Afilu Karav Lezumi Lezet, even if it's closer to her from to him. Now, it seems again that this is not talking about when necessarily it's within Dalet Amos. But if you have the great distance between the two of them, and it's closer to one of them than the other, that's sufficient. Now, in the Bavli also, I didn't look it up for today, to be honest with you, but the Bavli also, if I recall correctly, the discussion does not assume it's within Dalet Amos or Pisha Yadayim, just close. It could be 100 amos between the two of them. If it falls within her 50 amos, it's a get. If it falls within his 50 amos, it's not a get. Okay? So.
It sounds like Bris Mitzvah.
What?
They measure.
That's you have to measure, right? So there let's feel if a dog comes and takes it, and she wasn't able to get to it, ain't immigration, not divorced. because it has to be actually not just that it falls within her grasp, but that she was able to grasp it afterwards. Okay, so if it fell within the area which is close to her, but then she was not able to get it, it's not a valid gerushin. Shmuel ba'da the Rabbi Eliezer. Shmuel said in this matter like Rabbi Eliezer as well. Now the next word of Polik, the Shaitar Yisrael takes out, the Roshan, the Bali takes out. When the Yerushalmi says, you know what, it's very interesting, it's very rare we find the score. And the best thing to do, is to just give it into her hand. Okay? Now the truth is, Mechuvan Yerushalmi sometimes means the Raisa. So it could be that that's what it means here as well. That, the Raisa, it says, V'nasan biyada, to give it into your hand. And all of these ways of acquiring get what you're talking about here only through Rabbanan. Now, the Rabbanan, the Chazal said, there works, nevertheless, Rabbanan have yeshkach b'yad chachamim, to say afkidu, there's the possibility of annulling marriage. They say if it's a vow of divorce, it's a vow of divorce. If not, so we annul the marriage. It could be that's what it means. But the problem meaning is not like that. The problem meaning is that it means that the best thing is to actually put it into her hands. Okay?
It's practical.
Right, it's very practical. It's very practical advice, which is very rare. Okay? If he was there was that distance between the two of them, right? Pishut Yadayim Berglaim. Either one of them could have taken it from there. So Shem Baba Shem B'Yachon says, Karov Lo Milo, if it's closer to him, her to Megureshes. Lo Milo, if it's closer to him, then to her, and Megureshes, not if it's Megureshes. Mechza, if it's 50-50, exactly in the middle, Megureshes, Fein Megureshes, she's a suffix. Abba by Rav Yirmi Amar, Kol Hein Detzin Megureshes, Fein Megureshes. Anytime it says suffix, Mizono Shmishlo, he still has to pay for her upkeep. It was interesting, I don't remember this from the Bible either. But Mizono Shmishlo, he's got to pay for upkeep because even though usually we say Mutzim Chaver Lavaraya, in this case, I guess it's an incentive to make sure he actually does divorce her, so we say he has to pay.
And she can still eat truma as well.
If it's going, still feed her, can't feed her truma. No, because it's Suffolk Erushin. So the got to be sur where we would be machmir. Because Shemisha we make him pay. In terms of kiddushin, also the same halach applies as by get. Well, here in terms of where if he tosses her the ring, no romantics here. He doesn't put a ring on her finger, just tosses the ring at her and says here. Okay. In terms of a returning a debt, also, which Gemara is going to ask about, how can you mix in Choshe Mishpat to this matter? Amar lo, if he said to, she said to him, well, it's to a borrower and a lender, not same gender. The borrower said to the lender said to the borrower, Zrok li chovi, toss me my debt. V'zarko, and he said the borrower threw it. Karav l'malve, lands closer to the lender. Zacha, he acquires it. It should be Zacha HaMalve, the lender acquires it. Karav loive, if it lands closer to the borrower, Haloive Chayiv, then it remains liable. Mechza, if it can land in the middle, Shneim Yachloku, they divide it up. In other words, it's a suffix, so he has to pay half of the debt. If it got money, got lost or something, he says pay half of the debt. Okay?
Keeping cars, like if you get it closer to me, you unlock the whole thing.
That's a very good point you bring up. Better than you realize. Because that's how Gemara is going to look at it. It's going to look at it as a mechila. Because it can't be considered a valid return of the debt. It can only be learned as some type of mechila. Do you want to try eating the rest of this?
Sounds like double or nothing. Really?
Good luck.
Flip cards against the wall.
Right, it's a gamble. Here, put this between your hand and the ice cream. You want to hold it in a napkin? Good idea, right? Better safe than sorry. Okay, so if she was standing on top of a roof, Uzrakollah, and he tossed to get at her, came and Shagil Lavirgag, once it reached the airspace of the roof, Harazim Gresh's a valid divorce. Humi Lamal Bilamat, if he's on top and she's below, Uzrakollah, and he threw it to her, came and Shadim Sagag, once it left the airspace of the roof, and it was in the airspace of the garden. Even if it somehow gets erased or burnt at that moment, that raising Greshus is already divorced. Okay? We're going to discuss these in some detail. Right, exactly. Reish Lakish b'shem Abba Kohen Bardla. Reish Lakish is the name of Abba Kohen Bardla. Adam Zoiche b'mitzia toch arba amos. The person acquires a mitzia within 4 amos, right? Now, this is actually in the Girsa in Peah, where this appears also as Adam Zoiche l'chaveiro. Oh, boy. Thank you. A lost object which you find. A person, why don't we throw out the stick now? I think it's about finished. Here, throw it out. Okay, I'll throw it out. Now again, as I said, the Gerson Peh is Onam Zoichel L'Chavero. To try to leave is also Gerson Bavli above Mitzia. That not only can I acquire myself a Mitzia when it comes to my coming in 4 amos of it, but I can intend to acquire it for a friend of mine, and my friend acquires it that way as well. Okay? My timer, what pasuk teaches us this? This is a very strange pasuk, a very strange application pasuk. We did have this in Peah, which is way back when, at the beginning of the Yerushalmi. David HaMelech relates to his son Shlomo. In my poverty, I prepared for the house of God zahav, gold, kikar mea, 100 kikar worth of gold, elef, or mea elef, 100,000. The kesef and silver, elef halofin kikarim, 1,000,000, that's 1,000,000 measures. And copper and iron ain't mishko without any measure. Because there was much of it. And I prepared sticks and stones. And you add on. So that's a pasuk. So Rabbi Yanai, the way Rabbi Yonah. So actually, the way there's a whole discussion of how exactly this pasuk we derive from this pasuk that you can work through Daled Amos. But basically, the way it works, the way Korbaneda says, is that if I come within 4 hours, how could David say he was poor if he acquired all this silver and gold for the Beis Hamikdash? So they say he never acquired himself, but rather as he got within Daled Amos of it, he would be makdish to the Beis Hamikdash. So he never actually acquired himself, but that's how he could remain poor at the same time that he was giving stuff to the Beis Hamikdash. Okay? So there's my understanding. Rabbi Yeshua said, boy, Manaka, what are you talking about? Even though if he was within 4 amos, Oshiru, he acquired it himself, right? Im Chutz amos, if it's with the gold and silver was beyond his 4 amos, Yeshua Makdish Dover Shein Shalo, top of Memvav, how can it be Makdish? It's how it is. So it says, Mark, Kimenu, but Makdish Rishon. He remained poor because as he got within 4 amos of each thing, he would immediately be makdish. So he would temporarily have ownership, but only very briefly. And by the time he left, but he immediately was makdish, and therefore he never amassed enough gold and silver as personal aggrandizement.
Isn't that a charitable remainder trust? Isn't that something like that? Where you acquire, whatever you have, you're giving it to charity. But it's still yours, but it's only a name only.
Sounds good. Rabbi Avun said, Malboni, he gives different shot in the post, not relevant to our discussion, in which case it becomes irrelevant to our discussion. Malboni, what is it, my poverty? Shein Hashuz b'fnei Mishoyav Omar v'Hoyolam. No matter how rich you are, there's no such thing as riches before God. So everybody's saying, even though I became very rich, I'm impoverished vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who owns everything. Another interpretation, in my poverty, Shamis'ane. David HaMelech, Shlomo, of course, used to make very big meals. David also made big meals, but he could have made big meals. But he refrained from doing so. He fasted, and he would give the value of his Uda to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Oni, according to this, doesn't mean poverty, but rather means in my affliction, my tiness, as opposed to my owning. Hey, Rabbi Yaakov Haridi Kam Reish Lakish. So now we're going to ask this whole concept Daled Amos. This is a parallel discussion to Gomar about Mitzia in the first parak, in the Bavli. Hey, Rabbi Yaakov, I already asked, confirm Reish Lakish Vatin, and then we learned, Roz HaMetzia v'nafel oleh, if you saw a lost object and you fell upon it, uva, as if it was made to, not as if, in order to assert ownership. Somebody else comes and grabs onto it. The second guy owns it because you just fell on it. You never took up ownership of it. So the question is, what about the Daled Amos? So it says, it's a case where he didn't say if the Arba Amos should work for him. Now, there's an interesting discussion. The Mefarshim and Ginpeah have an interesting discussion. The Rash Sirleo and the Pnei Moshe say what it means is he was Megala Das by falling on it. He revealed that he wasn't relying on Daled Amos. Because had he relied on Daled Amos, so he wouldn't have he wouldn't have fallen. He just would have stood upright, and that would have asserted his ownership. The Gra, however, says, and this is Pashup Shai Nagmar, he says if you want to use Daled Amos, you have to verbally announce that you're using Daled Amos. You have to assert the Daled Amos verbally. Okay, when we learned Pei, I don't remember seeing that because I have a new parish on Pei. I didn't have at the time. Maybe that's why. Maybe I just don't remember. But in any event, the bottom line is you must, according to the Gra, and it sounds like it here, Daled Amos is an assertion of ownership. And again, it seems like it's the Rabbana, at least vis-a-vis Metzia. So you can invoke Daled Amos, but you must invoke it verbally. Okay. Says Maravatin.
Daled Amos is Kinyan Chotzer, right?
It's the extension of Kinyan Chotzer. It's not really your Chotzer.
It's...
when we were kids, we used to say, you can't come inside my Daled Amos. I don't know if you said that in St. Louis.
We didn't do that in St. Louis.
Yeah, but in New York we did that. But that's meaningless. Because of the Daled Amos, it doesn't become my Daled Amos. What it means is that I can assert it for vis-a-vis purposes of acquisition, but I don't own the Daled Amos, right?
Okay. But the point is, by Chotzer, you don't have to announce anything.
Right, that's true.
And yet by Daled Amos, you say you have to announce.
That's the Gra, yeah, because that's the Gra said. Chazal gave you the power to invoke it, but you must invoke it.
So the Daled Amos is an aspect of Yad, is that not?
Well, Chutz is an aspect of Yad, right?
That's why.
Gemara's going to say that later on.
Doing that roundabout.
No, Gemara's going to say that explicitly at some point. I don't remember where, but we'll say that. Or maybe we saw it last night. We saw it last night, actually. We saw it last night. Yeah. What?
The rule is Chutzer's.
Yeah, that's the bottom Mem Daled Amud Aleph. We had it. Shmos veikachos kolaytzim yod v'adarnam v'chiyodam milokav v'mal miyodam mirshuso. You know, so Chatzera, and then the Gemara goes on to discuss Gin and Chotzer.
It's just that the verbalization just doesn't make sense. There's no room for it.
Yeah, but that would be true by a Chotzer, which is automatically yours, midoraisa, etc. yourself. But the Gra is saying something has to make these Daled Amos an extension of you. What does it? Okay, I don't want to. Look, I can't argue with you. The Rash Sirleo agrees with you. But the Gra, that's the whole thing you have to assert it verbally. Okay? Which is a bunch of Pshadi in the Gemara. But again, the others argue. Says More, but and then we learn. More has the same question a couple of times in different forms. I don't know why. But then we learn Nafal Aleh if he fell upon it, or the Piris to Litalitza Aleh, he spread his towels upon it. Marvino Semena, we take him out, off of it. Again, Odiba, it's also about Bishloam Ayiskli Arbamos. He didn't invoke the Daled Amos. Or he was Magai, he revealed they didn't want to use the Daled Amos by falling on it, whatever it was. But Rabbi Kay said, Shnai Shemiskachom, where two poor people were arguing about a lost sheep in the field, which was Shechacha, right? The third guy comes, grabs it, the choir grabbed it, acquires it. So it says more again, it's also about a case where a person didn't assert Daled Amos. Rabbi Yatzir Shem Rabbi Yochanan said, Zu Gittin. Our whole mission is talking about beget, as opposed to matana. It doesn't work by matana. There's no such thing as Daled Amos by matana. They didn't make such a thing. Now more is going to get into an expansive discussion of this. Ruba the Rabbi Yochanan, Ruba the Reish Lakish. Now, Rabbi Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan have a machlokes, And there's an aspect of Rabbi Yochanan which is greater than that of Reish Lakish, an aspect of Reish Lakish which is greater than that of Rabbi Yochanan. What is the machlokes? This actually goes back to well, we'll see. Says Gemara, Ruba. Now, I'm going to go like the Korban Eid who changes the girsa here. Most of the Rishonim Achronim in the Ramban changes the girsa here, and most of the Achronim follow the Ramban. Ruba the Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish says something greater. He argues on Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan just said, by Matana there is no doubt Amos. But Reish Lakish says, "My mitzia she'ena zoicha midas acher." Mitzia, nobody is selling it to you. Nobody is facilitating your acquisition of the object. And nonetheless, zoicha b'toch doubt Amos does work by mitzia. Matana shu zoicha b'das acher, matana which should be easier to accomplish because somebody else is imparting, is giving you the gift. Lo koshke is not a kavachomer that doubt Amos should work. So he argues Rabbi Yasa named Rabbi Yochanan, and he holds that doubt Amos works by matana. Ruba, on the other hand, there's a greater position here. It should be Rabbi Yochanan, who holds my matana. Now we have to change the girsa severely. My matana shu zoicheba, a matana which you acquire, it should be midas acher, from somebody else's, with somebody else's participation. Ain't no zoicheba doubt Amos. You don't get it from doubt Amos. Mitzia lo koshkein is not a kavachomer that mitzia doubt Amos shouldn't work. Okay, so he holds that he argues on the entire Gemara which you just had. He says that when not only does doubt Amos not work by get, it doesn't even work by mitzia. Okay, sorry. That does doubt Amos not work by matana. It does work by get. Neither does doubt Amos not work by matana. It doesn't even work by mitzia. Says matana, where somebody else is facilitating the king, doubt Amos does work. It doesn't work by mitzia as well. So the bottom line is, he denies the whole previous Gemara. The whole previous Gemara, Reish Lakish would say, there's a kingdom of doubt Amos. No such thing as a kingdom of doubt Amos. According to Rabbi Yochanan, the only time there's a kingdom of doubt Amos is if you're makdish something from hefker. That's a sugya. Now, the sugya which is coming up in Masechet Nedarim in the Bavli, and it discusses there in Pei as well. If you come within doubt Amos of something you want to be makdish it, then you can make it hekdesh, despite the fact that you haven't yet acquired it. But in fact, mitzia, matana, doubt Amos does work, only get, according to Rabbi Yochanan. According to Reish Lakish, mitzia, matana, get, all three of them, doubt Amos works. Okay? Fascinating concept. Okay? So the fascinating machlokas. Heisiv Rabbi Zira. Continuing further the Gemara. Heisiv Rabbi Zira, Kumi Rabbi Yasa. Rabbi Zira asked for Rabbi Yasa, why do you say that by a gift, doubt Amos doesn't work? But then we learn our mission of Chelin and Kiddushin, that by Kiddushin, doubt Amos works. So how come doubt Amos works by Kiddushin? Which is, I don't know, I can understand Gittin is not a raya from Matana, because Gittin is not a Kinyan, right? Gittin we said is a receiving. But Kiddushin is a Kinyan, right? You're being makdeh something to the woman. And if their doubt Amos works, why doesn't doubt Amos work by Matana as well? So it says the Gemara, Amalei said, "Who Gittin, who Kiddushin?" Gittin and Kiddushin are taka, both unique because we have a parallel, famous parallel. V'yotza v'hoisa, makish havaya liyitzia. The v'yotza v'hoisa means she comes out of one marriage, goes into another marriage. So we say the way you exit from a marriage is the same way you enter a marriage, and therefore the parameters are the same. But in fact, the halacha will be that matana is different, right? So it says, still I'm not satisfied. It says in our mission talks about returning a debt via the mechanism of doubt Amos. If you're going to say that you can't give a gift via doubt Amos, how can you return a get via doubt Amos? So says the Gemara, how can you return a debt, not get, debt via doubt Amos? So he said, this goes back to what you said before. It's not comparable. Because here, he's not really returning debt. He's the lender is being moichel the debt under certain conditions. In other words, in fact, the money is not actually reaching halachically the domain or possession of the creditor. What it is the creditor, on certain conditions, being moichel the debt. That's what's happening. Okay, and Gemara gives examples of that. Normally, they said, "Shkenim amarlo zarkosa liyam b'yimacholach." It's just as if the lender said to the borrower, "Throw it into the sea, and I'll mochel you." Mochel. That's mochel. So here, throwing it into the Daled Amos is not really an act of returning the debt; it's just an act which the malveh has consented should be regarded as sufficient for him to be mochel the law. So that's more of the obvious question. After that's the case, I feel karav leloive. Why we say in our Mishnah that if it's closer to the borrower, it's as if the borrower did not return it. I feel karav leloive is once he tossed it, maybe he has poor aim, maybe he can't get it, doesn't have power, right? But once he tossed it, even that's closer to him, zacha, it should be zacha malva. Let the lender acquire it. Yet utznina we learned karav leloive chayev. If it lands closer to the borrower remains obligated. Says more, it's not a question. There, it's as if he said, "Shekedim armel zaket shikonis l'rishuso." It's as if he said, "Throw it until it enters my domain." In other words, there's a minimum level after beyond which he's moichel, but not if you don't reach that minimum level. The minimum level has got to be close to that individual, the creditor. Rabbi Yavin said, "Kol ilam esifta." All the questions to Rabbi Zira Meshu Kum Rabbi Yasa, which Rabbi Zira asked for Rabbi Yasa. Reish Lakish in an earlier generation had made Meshu Kum Rabbi Yochanan would answer for Rabbi Yochanan. V'kavi Menayu, and Rabbi Yochanan received these questions and he answered them. Kim Patraisa, like Rabbi Yasa answered Rabbi Zira. So the bottom line is, it's a very, very basic machlokas, whether Daled Amos works by anything other than get, at all, or not. Okay? Rabbi Adam Shem Chizkiah said, now, there are all sorts of interpretations in the next line. Most of the interpretations are based on the assumption we don't change the girsa. I don't know the carbonate and shunun is close on the bottom. We do change the girsa, which makes it much simpler. Also, practical, that will make it a practical advice line. Rabbi Adam Shem Chizkiah said, it should be nishbar halav lar shanu. When do we say that? Well, we look at where the get landed within Daled Amos, where it landed closer, further, only if the scribe's pen broke, meaning he can't write it over again. If he can write it over again, then best to write over and start from scratch, right? So it's about where the scribe is broken, he's gone, the pen broke, and that's why he can't write it over again. Again, there are all sorts of other interpretations. The simple meaning is the payment for the scribe, and that would have to do with where it landed halfway, where you're repaying a debt, and it landed halfway, so then you might have questions who pays the scribe. But it's very difficult. You really need the sledgehammers to make that work. So I changed it. Nishbar Alav, it tells us that all of this is after B'diavad. But if you could do it properly, the Chatchila, go back and do it again. Okay? Like we said before in the previous meeting, his hand from man's hand. Amr Elazar said, change your gears to the rooftop, right? Masnisa B'gakshi Yesh Lo Makeh. And when it says if you toss a getter on the roof, so it's a valid get, it's only if the roof has a parapet, a fence around it. So then when it enters the airspace of the fence, it's considered to vushieri lavir makeh. When it's within the airspace of the parapets, like you said before, pluta k'mishuncha, it's absorbed within the walls, so therefore it's considered to be acquired. The she'ein l'makeh, what it doesn't have a parapet, then it still could be evaluated if you toss on the roof. Vushieri lavir shlosha, when it comes within 3 tefachim of the ground of the roof. Because that's the halachic concept of level, right? So then the Ritvam, it's if the land on the ground. So then that's considered kol shlosha shem smuchim lakag. Any within 3 tefachim of the roof, kagagein. It's like the roof. Rabbi Yaakov Racham Rabbi Barimuna b'shem Rabbi Achva said it should be v'chein in the Shabbos. Korban says that's true about Shabbos as well. It was within 3 tefachim of the ground. Shekol shlosha shem smuchim mechitza. Well, actually, it's a question. Do we say v'chein l'in Shabbos? Do we say during Shabbos as well? Shekol shein smuchim mechitza k'mechitze. Do we say in terms of Shabbos, if you toss something within 3 tefachim of walls, it's as if it hit the wall? Now, of course, this is a very strange question because one is vertical, one is horizontal. I was asking, if on the horizontal you say within 3 tefachim of the ground, it's like it's on the ground. What about on the vertical? Within 3 tefachim of the walls, as if it's on the wall. Okay, I don't make up the Yerushalmi. That's what the Yerushalmi seems to be asking, right?
We call this question in the Bible.
No, it's really not. Rabbi
We
Yas.
had about something sticking to the wall.
What?
We had something about if you
Sticking to the wall. But you're right. There is something about sticking to the wall, but nothing ever about. A thick date, the Vela Shmeina, right? So Rabbi Yas says lo damia. No, there's no comparison. Gittin milomalon v'Shabbos milamaton. Now, he said it's an interesting concept which he says here. In terms of get, I'm going to explain like carbonate. It's a little bit cryptic, but I understand like the carbonate. In terms of get, if you have two getting next to each other, and she's standing in one, so the other get, but she borrowed or she acquired rights over both roofs. I say getting two gagging, two roofs next to each other, and she acquired the jurisdiction over both roofs. So then it doesn't matter where the get falls. They're both considered to be one large rishus. But by Shabbos, each rishus is separate. Even if you own both, they're two separate rishus. Okay? Now, sometimes that has a ramification, sometimes it doesn't have a ramification. Right? But Lamaisa, that's considered to be two separate rishus. One roof and another roof. Okay? So therefore he says by Shah, basically the way the Carbonator puts it, I didn't explain sufficiently. The way Carbonator explains it, by Shah, by Gittin, we go by who owns the roofs. By Shabbos, we go by who owns the houses underneath. So if I acquire both roofs, I would still need an Erev between the two if the houses were owned by two separate families underneath the roofs. That's what he wants to say, the Pshai and the Gemara is. So therefore, he wants to say that since by Shabbos it's not and Gittin it's not comparable. By get obviously we're more lenient, and therefore by Gittin I feel low nach. By get, even if it hasn't yet actually come to a rest, nevertheless it's in the jurisdiction which is now considered hers. That's considered to be sufficient. So even if it's lavud to the ground, that's considered to be suffice. By Shabbos, by Shabbos it actually has to come to a rest. Now, coming to a rest means if it's within 3 tvachim of a wall, and even if it's within 3 tvachim of the ground, as long as it hasn't come to a rest, he wants to say that's not considered to be enough to transgress Shabbos. It's a fascinating concept. We don't pass that way. We pass if you throw within 3 tvachim of the ground on Shabbos, you are liable. But he wants to say no. Gittin, we're more lenient. It has to be in the general domain and jurisdiction. By Shabbos, you need to have hanocha. And hanocha is not considered to be 3 tvachim of the ground. It's considered mamish hitting the ground or resting on the wall. So within 3 tvachim is insufficient, right? Rabbi Yam Mishem Riel said, "Vushi yered la'avir mechitzos." He says that in our Mishnah, when it says that when you tossed something off the roof, and it went into the airspace of the courtyard, and the courtyard is where she's standing, it's a valid get. That's only if the courtyard has walls. That's in the walls of the courtyard. Rabbi Yochanan, the Yama asked Rabbi Yochanan, is Masdisa the Rebbe? Is Amish like Rebbe? The Rebbe Avad Avim Mechitza Kamamosho. The Rebbe makes the airspace between the walls as if it has substance and if it came to a rest. Amalei said, no, Diver Koli Hacha the Gittin. It's goes according to everybody because Gittin is different. Now, you know why that's true? Because B'Yasivne, he could have asked Rebbe Omer Makura in Masechta Shabbos. Rebbe says, when is something considered to have come to a rest? If it goes into an airspace, only if there's also a roof. There's a Rebbe's famous sheet of basic command Damalia Damya. If you toss something from outside into a house, even if it goes in one window and outside the next window, since a house has a roof, it's considered to be as if it rests in Rishus HaRabim, in Rishus HaYachid, sorry. But that's only if it throws into a house. Yet here in our Mishnah, it's even if you said throw it into the airspace of open air. So clearly, since we could have asked that difference, or he could have responded to the difference, could have said our Mishnah is not Rebbe, because Rebbe says that you need to have an actual roof, and here our Mishnah doesn't use a roof. It must be because Gittin is different, because by Shabbos need Hanocha, and Hanocha means either a complete rest or in a covered area. But by get, all you need is in the jurisdiction. And jurisdiction means within 3 tvachim of, and that even if it's within airspace and has not young come to the ground. Okay? So the Gemara clearly is not going to shita Masechta Shabbos of Kluta Kamishum Chadamya. Because if we're going with that shita, at this point it's not. Because we're going to that shita, so then obviously we wouldn't have an issue here. My Gittin, my Shabbos. Now, why by Gittin? Again, none of this is in the Bavli that I recall. But my Gittin, my Shabbos, so doesn't she get and Shabbos? That by get, you don't need a full stop, and by Shabbos you do. On Rabbi Ab, fascinating more. On Rabbi Ab, Shabbos ksiv lo sasem malach. It says you cannot do malacha. It's emphasis on you. Nasi simileh. If you're kluta kamishahuncha, then you didn't do the malacha. Because the malacha has to do with what you intended. And you intended to throw something somewhere. You never intend to throw something into airspace. Because it's not going to remain in the airspace. So therefore, your malacha is not complete. Your malacha's machshavas is not complete until it lands.
Seek ratio. You know you're throwing it.
But it ain't over till it's over. That's what it's saying. So if it's snatched in midair, you're a punter. We never had this. Not sure, 100%, but 99.99%. So, you remember such a thing anywhere? Bramhacha, he doesn't. Bramhacha, v'nasam biyada birshusa. Here it says v'nasam biyada, it just means in her general domain. So it's quite explicit that get has different parameters in Shabbos. By Shabbos, your entire malachas be done. Again, this is going according to assumption we don't know kluta k'misha uncha. It come to complete rest because that's part of losasa kol malacha, losasa malacha. But by get, all you need is v'nasam biyada. Okay. Halacha da. Beishamar says of poiter adam esishto beget yoshan. You can use a get which was written and then you were secluded with your wife. Now, if you had relations with your wife after you wrote a get, you can't use the get anymore. We assume you didn't have relations. You're just secluded. You didn't have relations. Beisil omrim osrin. They forbid it. Ezu get yoshan. They want to get yoshan because she's yachnim ba miyachshin echkasvua. Seclusion, but no, not necessarily bia. Rabbi Yehuda b'Shem Shmuel said v'kulam min nisu. Igor beisil. If you got married and beisil does this get. Lote say she doesn't have to get divorced. She remains married to the second guy. Shaloti lasa, but now less if she has kids from the second guy. Let's say the kids are mamzerim, she doesn't have to get divorced. Says the Gemara, Anatzina me'achar shekasfula. We learned in our Mishnah, we learned in our Mishnah that we're talking about after you wrote the get, the seclusion took place. Istani, and that's the machlokas beisil and beishamai. Isai tai me'achar shenosla. Even after you gave the get, if the seclusion took place, we have machlokas beisil and beishamai. Man me'achar shekasfula. Now, it's a very strange Gemara, and everybody grapples with this. He who says that our Mishnah is talking about, I'm just going to interpret it as simply as I can, although everybody goes crazy about this. That our Mishnah is talking about after you wrote the get, as opposed to having given it. That seems to be an indication that if we be it would be an indication that we should all like Beis Shammai that that we're not afraid that about the yichud being actual bia. He said after we gave it to her, is the discussion on our Mishnah, Misayel Beis Hillel, that seems an indication like Beis Hillel, that Beis Hillel says that we are suspect of the bia. Now, the bia took place in yichud. Now, what I just said is the way the Ritbaz and others tried to up. It really doesn't make any sense because you can't say one way of learning is proof to Beis Shammai and one way of proof is a proof to Beis Hillel, because Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are arguing in our Mishnah, and the question is how to learn their argument. So you can't say one way of learning their argument is a proof to Beis Shammai, like the Korban Eidah, who says it, which at first I thought was wild and wacky. But now I think that it's better. The Korban Eidah says they're referring to Mechlokas Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. It's very in the Masechta. Beis Hillel says you can divorce your wife for any reason, no matter what. If she burns your food, just divorce her. Beis Shammai says you only can divorce what? If you saw she did something bad. So I would say that the way he learns it, Who says that once you wrote the get, right, you shouldn't. It's an issue whether you should use it, whether you should avoid. That you can, even if you did seclude yourself, you can still divorce her with that get. So that it's like Beis Shammai says, it's as if he's giving you advice. He's saying, you know what, but divorce her anyway. Truly secluded herself with her, but she's a slut. That's why you're divorcing her. So better divorce her nonetheless. And Beis Hillel says, no, look, you're divorcing her because she burnt your food. But you're willing to seclude yourself with her, just keep her. And don't divorce her. So that's how the Korban Eidim learns it, okay? So it's not referring to Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai Machlokas about whether Yichud is a problem after having given a get, but rather it's referring to Machlokas Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai why you are divorcing her. Okay, let's go another 5 minutes because next tomorrow is very easy. It's mostly Mishnah. Kazlash, you gotta go? Okay. Kazlash Shem Malch Sheino Genis. If you wrote the get for the purpose of with the year of an improper kingdom, meaning it's not the kingdom which is reigning in this country at this time, right? And so the Gemara gives another pshat here, rather the Bavli gives another pshat. That's Malchus Bavel. They were considered Malchus Sheino Genis because they didn't have their own alphabet and their own dating system. But the Pashas, he wrote the date and the get for a government which is not ruling. Or L'Shem Malchus Yavan and the Roman, L'Shem Malchus Yimad and Shem Malchus Yavan, such as the Medians and the Greeks are no longer ruling. The Binyan Bais wrote a date based on when the base of Israel was built, the Chorban Bais when it was destroyed. If you were in the east, you wrote the place of the get, as if it's in the west. Mar because of Mizrach or vice versa, west and east. This get is null and void. And since it's null and void, if she gets married on the basis of the get, we throw the book at her. It's like a woman who got married in Yavamas on the basis of one witness that her husband died, not two witnesses. We throw the book at her. If the husband comes back, right? She got divorced from this both. She needs to get from both. She doesn't have the right to ksuva, nor any fruit back, nor any support, not even clothing which she got from neither one. If she took any of this from either one of them, she has to return it. But Vlad Mamzer, a child she has from either one of these husbands. If either one is a Kohen, neither then can go to her the Levaya. Lo says a Kohen lo mitzios did not acquire her lost objects, no maser nor handiwork. So lo, but person there nor can they nullify her vows. So if she was a regular Jew and they were Kohanim, well, even they're not Kohanim. She's considered to be a Zona because she had relations with somebody who's forbidden to her. She can never have Truma again. And Yoshua said the heirs of both of these husbands cannot inherit Yoshua Ksuvasa, her dowry. If both these husbands died, each one's brother, Chotzin Lo Miyamin, has to Chalitza, not Yibu. Now, these are, now you have lesser problems. Shinu Shmo, Shemiro, V'Shemiro. If you change in the get, his name and her name are the same as the name of the city and her name of her city. Teitze, Mizel. Oh no, it's all the same thing. Sorry, there's an outless of Then she got to get divorced in each one of them. And all these severities we throw at her as well. Kol Arayas, Shamatar, same Mutaros. Anytime we have an erva, we have two co-wives who fall to evil, and one of them is an erva on the yavam, so therefore the co-wife goes free. If these co-wives go out to the marketplace and marry somebody else, it's idleness. It turns out the one who their co-wife who was considered to be an erva to the yavam turned out to be barren, and she can't. Her marriage to the first husband was mistaken, and only the marriage to us of the woman who already went to marry somebody else's vow marriage. She's got to get divorced from both. And all these problems apply to her as well. Okay? So it says more, the Gemara is going to discuss that actually in the next halacha. First of all, Rabbi Yoshua said, why is this kid a mamzer? The date in the get is not an essential component of the get, it's only the Rabbanan. Right? The Raisa, all get says a Re'mutas Chol Adam. So he messed up in the day. What's so keferach? So fascinating word. Ran said also Vlad Mamzer Sakona. Because if we do not maintain our shalom with the malchus will kill us. So therefore, we have to be extra special careful in writing the Gittin to demonstrate that we give respect to the malchus. If somebody doesn't throw respect, we throw the book at them to show the malchus how much we respect them, and therefore we passel the get to such a severe extent. So it's a psul d'Rabbanan because of shalom malchus. Very interesting halacha. Baruch Hashem Rav said not that way. He said, "Called up here, all the psulim are packed to Rabbi Meir." Our Rabbi Meir, who says, and Rabbi Meir's principle doesn't appear here, but it appears elsewhere, that anybody who deviates from the language Chachamim wrote should be in a get. Is good. The kid is a mamzer, and all these psulim apply. Chutz mishina shmo v'shem hira, except for his name and her name, which that's also part, and where they come from, that's part of it's an integral component of the get, and there even Chachamim would agree that the kids are mamzerim. Raimana Bayikumi Rabbi Yasa. Afa Megarish is this true about also Perak Megarish, which is a parak where the other psulim listed in Gittin, and that's the next parak, which we haven't got to. Is that also a parak over Shkolar Meir? So he said, he said, I'm not talking about your parak, the next parak, I'm talking about this parak. Anytime except for his name and her name, and the cities where we say that the get is puzzle, and we throw the book into her, that's only the Rabbi Meir. But it could be that Rabbanan will also be to the psulim which we'll have in the next parak. Okay, we'll stop here for this evening, and tomorrow night will be the last night of this schedule. Next week, maybe we'll learn Thursday, I don't know yet, but certainly not this early in the evening.